Good afternoon. Welcome. You're tuned into the Labor Forum here at WRFG 89.3 FM. My name is Diane Mathewitz. I'm a retired auto worker. I'd like to say hello to my co-host, Paul McLennan, who is retired ATU with the MARTA workers.
Hi, Diane.
So we're so happy that you've tuned in today, and we have another great show with lots of interesting guests and information. The opinions that are expressed on the Labor Forum may not necessarily be those of the Board of Directors, staff, or volunteers here at WRFG. You know, I want to thank the Teamsters. We play an underwriting message from them at the beginning of the program, and I want to thank them for their continued support of this particular forum, but also for supporting WRFG Radio, which is an independent, community, progressive radio station where you can hear us on your radio at 89.3 FM. You can hear us on your computer at wrfg.org. You can get us through your mobile apps by going to the iTunes and other app stores on your mobile devices. And you also can actually watch us right now as we're fixing the curtains so that the light doesn't shine in our guest eyes. On our Labor Forum YouTube channel. And if you don't have an opportunity to watch us as we're doing it live, you can always catch the following day when we archive the program. So with all those announcements taking up, I will go ahead and we'll do our labor headlines. There's a lot happening in the world and here as well. And following that, we'll get some labor history. Then we'll have two of our guests calling in, and then we'll have our guest who's in the studio, Darrell Lane, who's with the bakery. I got to get all these names right. There's so many workers you cover. So it's bakery, confection, tobacco workers, grain and millers, local.
Right.
And Darrell is here, and we're going to be talking about worker safety. So let's start first with the labor headlines for today, February 2nd, 2015. An historic and inspiring story of worker organizing comes to us from Lebanon. On January 25th, the founding conference was held in Beirut to establish a union, and these are in quotes, of a new type, unquote, for domestic workers, mostly immigrants. The Minister of Labor had declared that foreign workers had no right to form a union and threatened to have the internal security forces break up the event. The organizers, both Lebanese and foreign-born domestic workers, were warned of severe consequences if they went ahead with the conference, designated as an illegal gathering by the government. Despite the intimidation, hundreds of workers, mostly women from the Philippines, Sri Lanka, Madagascar, Ethiopia, as well as Lebanon, cheered the formation of the General Union of Cleaning Workers and Social Care. The deplorable conditions of foreign domestic workers has been well documented in multiple countries, including the U.S. This initiative in Lebanon is unprecedented for the Arab world, which has an estimated 30 million migrant workers who are often subject to virtual slavery with sexual abuse, little or no pay, working long hours, enduring beatings, and even murder at the hands of their employers. The workers were dressed in red t-shirts, hats, and scarves, a color selected to illustrate their determination and passion to win justice and recognition of their rights as workers. As an aside, here in the U.S., domestic workers such as nannies and housekeepers, home health care workers are also organizing for recognition under the law as workers deserving a living wage, benefits, and collective bargaining. And here in the U.S., today was to have been the start of the trial of Stephen Kirschbaum, a founder and current grievance chair of the Boston School Bus Drivers, members of Steelworkers Local 8751. The massive snowstorm that is dumping inches of snow in New England has caused a delay in the legal proceedings. The formation of the School Bus Drivers Union came out of the desegregation of Boston's public schools, a mighty struggle by the Black community in particular in the mid-1970s. During months of racist attacks on the buses taking children to school, the drivers earned the respect of parents for their steadfast care to deliver the students safely to and from school. For decades now, Steelworkers Local 8751 has stood in solidarity with other workers under attack, fought education cutbacks and school closings, marched against war and racism, and defended marginalized communities such as immigrants, the disabled, and LGBT people. In the summer of 2013, that's the summer of 2013, Veolia Corporation was given the contract to transport Boston's public school children. A notorious union buster, the company immediately began ignoring the contract, resulting in hundreds of grievances and multiple NLRB charges. In the course of the bus drivers' efforts to uphold their contract, Veolia first fired 5 of the top leaders of the union, including Kirschbaum. When that didn't stop the fight back, which included other unions and community groups, Kirschbaum was hit with several felony charges arising from a mass rally. The trumped-up charge of felony assault and trespass was scheduled to begin this morning. Hundreds of supporters had been mobilized to pack the court. The trial has been rescheduled until Tuesday, March 3rd. Nevertheless, 75 people braved the snowstorm to show their support this morning in Boston. To learn more and to support the Boston school bus drivers, the website is www.bostonschoolbus5.org. And lastly, some important news. Washington, D.C. calling for union representation, number about 60% of the airline giant's flight service staff of 20,000. Delta is the least unionized major airline in the U.S. pilots having a collective bargaining agreement. This counts union in the making. In the
Okay, thank you, Diane. There's a lot going on in history this week. It's Black History Month, and we take note that on February 1st, President approved the 13th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, which abolished slavery. Demonstrating how much further the struggle for Black liberation had to go, 95 years later to the day, on February 1st, 1960, the sit-in movement began when 4 Black college students in Greensboro, North Carolina, refused to move from a Woolworth's lunch counter when denied service. By September 1961, more than 70,000 students had participated in sit-ins. Rosa Parks was also born this week on February 4th, 1913. There are 2 other lesser known events we want to focus on today that are also related to the history of white supremacy in this country. 2 stories that have relevance as Latinos and other immigrant groups continue to struggle for their freedom. On February 2nd, 1848, the Treaty of Guadalupe, Hidalgo was signed. It is the oldest treaty still in force between the United States and Mexico. The treaty's provisions called for Mexico to cede 55% of its territory, present-day California, Nevada, and Utah, New Mexico, most of Arizona, and portions of Wyoming and Colorado. As Mexico was developing as a new nation, it faced the expansion of the United States under its imperialist doctrine of manifest destiny. A misguided attempt by Mexico to encourage settlement of what is now Texas by Anglos resulted in the encroachment of the Mexican people there by those settlers. The aftermath of the Texas Rebellion in 1836 by these settlers resulted in a short-lived Texas Republic and later annexation in the U.S. as a state that would allow slavery. Border disputes between these 2 nations created the conditions that led to the invasion of Mexico by the U.S. In 1845, Congress had voted to annex Texas, and President Polk sent General Zachary Taylor and troops to patrol the border, newly defined by Congress as the Rio Grande River. Following an encounter between Mexican and U.S. troops, Pope called for Congress to declare war on Mexico. U.S. forces fought their way from Mexico's main commercial port of Veracruz on the Gulf of Mexico to the capital, Mexico City, nearly 300 miles away. The U.S. Army occupied the capital until the Mexican government agreed to give away its territories. 25,000 Mexicans and 12,000 Americans lost their lives in the war. Many see this event as the beginning of the Chicano people, a colonized nation within U.S. borders. The roots of the Chicano people on this land are deep and go back thousands of years before Columbus, as the land was populated by indigenous nations. In fact, the Apaches and their Diné relatives, the Navajos, did not miss a beat in continuing resistance to colonial domination when the U.S. annexed their territory as part of the half of Mexico taken in 1848. The treaty, which sealed the transfer of territory, even stipulated that both parties were required to fight the quote-unquote savage Apaches. This land grab enabled the U.S. to continue to expand its empire. There were up to 100,000 Mexican residents in these territories who chose to stay on their land and become subjects of the U.S. These lands were sparsely populated by 1848, but had a vast amount of natural resources. Gold was discovered in California shortly after the signing of the treaty, along with oil in Texas, minerals, agricultural land, and access to the entirety of the West Coast. This all created a major accumulation of wealth. This wealth acquisition was also aided by the labor of the Mexican people and other exploited peoples in the region the settlers used. This wealth was used by U.S. imperialism to acquire more land and resources through either financial or military means, not only in North America, but around the world. The U.S. wasted no time in bringing in white settlers to take over their newly acquired land and encroached on the Mexican people every way they could, from legal means to outright violence. The Mexican people were subject to a wide range of national oppression and became second-class citizens within the U.S. Currently, the U.S. counties with the highest concentration of Mexicans overlap closely with the area that belonged to Mexico before the theft of 1848. Some are recent arrivals, others trace their roots to long before the map was redrawn. They didn't cross the border, it crossed them. On February 2nd, 1931, during an economic depression, another event occurred demonstrating the racist oppression Mexican Americans continued to experience in this country. On this date, U.S. citizens were deported to Mexico. During the decade's first 4 years, over 400,000 Mexican Americans, many living here as long as 40 years, were deported. This tore families apart. It was a racial removal program, according to May Nagai, an immigration history expert at the University of Chicago. The legacy of the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo remains today. It established a pattern of political and military inequality between the two countries, and this oppressive relationship has influenced Mexican-U.S. relations ever since. Chicano and Mexicano people continue to struggle for democratic rights, self-determination, and liberation.
Thank you, Paul. And actually, this is going to segue very well into our guest who's on the line. So, Ashley, I know you're there. Hi.
Yes, hello. Hi, I'm right here.
Is Melissa there too?
Yeah, we're here together.
Oh, together. Oh, great. All right. So we have two sisters, Ashley and Melissa Rivas Triana, and they are students, members of the Freedom University, which is a fantastic organization that was initiated by professors at the University of Georgia. It was an attempt to try to make possible for the students who are denied access to the top 5 colleges here in the university system in Georgia, which includes the University of Georgia, Georgia State, Georgia Tech. Who am I missing?
Georgia College and State University and Georgia Regents.
Thank you. to be able to even apply. So Freedom University has brought together some of the most talented, creative, marvelous young students to help them further their education. It also has actually helped several to get scholarships at other colleges and universities around the country. So welcome, Melissa and Ashley.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So I don't know if you had a chance to hear a little bit of what Paul was talking about. We do their history, and he gave the background to the Treaty of Guadalupe, Hidalgo, and previous deportations of large numbers of Mexican people who had Mexican roots in this country. And I know both of you I've heard you speak at public forums, and I know that you're very out front and talk a lot about your own status here in the United States. So if you wouldn't mind, talking about that a little bit with our listening audience.
Sure. Well, as sisters, we both came to the United States with our family when we were 2 years old in 1998. 1996, sorry. I forgot how old I am. So we've been living here in the United States for most of our lives. But after overstaying our visas and kind of our legal status being up in the air, we became undocumented, and so now that's the situation that we face right now, being undocumented students, not only in the United States but in Georgia, where it's pretty hard to do that, more so than the rest of the nation.
So are both of you, and I'm going to have you explain this, are both of you DACA qualified?
We are, yes. Mm-hmm.
Could you explain that to us? Because that's really what's going to lead us into the next question, which is all the stuff in relation to the Georgia General Assembly and the kind of very backward right-wing reactionary legislation that they've done. So if you wouldn't mind telling our audience what it means to be a DACA person.
Sure, of course. So DACA, Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, was an executive order issued by President Obama that basically granted relief for the children of undocumented immigrants who arrived to this country at a young age through basically through no fault of their own, became illegal in this country, quote unquote, and so he granted aid by providing the ability to get a work permit, which in turn allows us to get a job and a driver's license, which is our work authorization documents, and it allows us to be safe basically from deportation in this country.
But it's just for 3 years, right? Don't you have to renew?
Yeah, actually, when it first came out, it was only valid for 2 years, and he recently came out and extended DACA. It used to have really strict rules and requirements. You had to be in this country before the age of 16. You had to be under 30 years old. So you had to graduate from a United States high school or have a GED from here. Right now, he kind of extended the requirements. He kind of took away the age limit and extended it for 3 years instead of 2 years.
Okay, so my understanding is that there's Georgia has had a lot of anti-immigrant legislation, including the thing that I mentioned right at the beginning, which disallows any high school graduate, no matter how great your grades are, no matter what a genius you are, from even applying to the top 5 schools if you are undocumented. And there's other legislation as well. My understanding is that there's a piece of legislation that's coming before, and that there's going to be a press conference on Thursday. And this would be a bill that would, in fact, provide in-state tuition for undocumented students. Could you talk a little bit about the impact of not being able to have in-state tuition when you've gone to the Georgia schools your whole life?
Yeah, and those specific policies you're talking about are policy 4.1.6, which is what bans us from attending to and applying to the top 5 public universities in the state, and policy 4.3.4 that is the in-state tuition ban, which basically bans us from receiving in-state tuition from any higher learning institution in the state. And so, to answer your question, how it feels to basically go your whole life in a Georgia public school system, and right at the very end to find out that you can't really take that education anywhere, it's honestly heartbreaking. It's really disappointing to. I can speak for both my sister and I when I say that we were both really, really ambitious students. We were really into our academics. We were really excited to start our college application process our senior year. And that's when we both found out that we were basically banned from all our top choices in the state. So it kind of left us not really knowing where to turn. We didn't think we had that many options when the main schools we were going for, Georgia State and UGA, they didn't accept us. They didn't want us. So we didn't know where to turn. And that's kind of where we found Freedom University, but I can talk a little bit more about that later.
No, go ahead. Tell us more about Freedom University and the concept behind it and the subjects that you study.
Okay, so Freedom University, as you guys said, it started through the work of four University of Georgia professors, and it started after the ban went into place in 2011. And so they got together with students and allies, and they decided that the way to fight it was the way that what they could do to fight it was what they do best, and they could just teach us or teach undocumented students. And so they started holding a class on Sunday evenings or Sunday afternoons, and to basically put undocumented students in the college setting. And then, so like I mentioned, my sister and I, we found Freedom University after graduating high school, actually. My mom actually found out about it through their Facebook page, and she showed it to us, and she was like, I know we at the moment, DACA hadn't been introduced yet, so neither of us had jobs, and we were out of high school, so we didn't really have anything to do at the moment. And so she showed it to us, and she said that it might be something you would like, you would be interested in. And we went to our first class, and it was honestly life-changing. Freedom University really strives to create a safe space for its students, because many times that's the first place where they're in the same room with other openly undocumented students. I know it was for me. Before going there, I mean, I knew undocumented students because of family members, because of really, really, really close friends. But other than that, you don't really know who's undocumented or not. It's not something you really advertise out loud. So yeah, I mean, that's how we kind of got into it, and we've been going to classes ever since. We graduated in 2012, so it's been we just started our third year at Freedom University.
Can I ask a question? I know that several of the students, and then we've had some of them on the air in the past, have gotten full scholarships at places like Berea and Amherst and a variety of other schools in California as well. So one of the things that's pretty obvious is that these are youth that have all the qualifications to really excel. And yet Georgia is turning its back on your potential. I was wondering if you just want to address that a little bit, and then if you have information about this press conference on Thursday.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, well, obviously, Freedom University's main goal is to basically get undocumented students into higher learning, higher education. So while Georgia does ban us from attending the top 5 public institutions, we strive to go to places where they will accept us, which many times is out of state and especially places up north. Because these are university professors who are teaching us, they have a lot of connections, or they know a lot of people in other universities, and they can help us to connect us with the admissions counselors and administration in other schools, and provide us with resources to get basically into those schools. Actually, it's really interesting that 1 in 5 students that come to Freedom University leave Freedom University with a full ride scholarship to a school out of state. So, yeah, like you mentioned, we have Freedom University alumni that are in Massachusetts right now, and in Hampshire College. We have some students in Tougaloo College in Mississippi, Berea in Kentucky, in Dartmouth even. So yeah, like you mentioned, these are all students who are like ridiculously academically qualified, and they've proven that not only like in 1st through 12th grade with their SAT scores, with their academic history, but they show that they can get into college so long as the college wants them there.
Okay, Ashley and Melissa, I want to thank you so much. If you wouldn't mind, right at the end here, do you have the information for that press conference on Thursday about this bill that would allow undocumented students to have in-state tuition, which would then make it much more affordable?
Yeah, I can actually give you a little bit of information.
Okay, we've just got about 30 seconds, so go ahead.
Sure. Yeah, the bill that you're actually mentioning is a bill that's been introduced into Congress to basically repeal the policy that I mentioned, 4.3.4, which bans us from in-state tuition. Yeah, it's going to be Thursday at 10 a.m. So yeah, the press conference will be Thursday at 10 a.m. And it's for Senate Bill 44. And there's going to be some testimonials there from students of how this bill could affect us and everything.
So do you know, is it inside the Capitol or is it on the Washington Street steps, or do you know where it is? No, we'll find out.
I think it's inside. It's not on the steps, it's inside.
Okay, so it's probably in the rotunda then. If people are looking for more information, do you have a website that you can direct them to?
Yeah, of course. I mean, Freedom University has our website, but we like to stay up to date with things like that on our Facebook page, which is Freedom University Georgia.
On Facebook.
So, yes, on Facebook. And we keep that very, very updated. But our website is freedomuniversitygeorgia.com. So, and then we have links to our Facebook from there.
And of course, people can always Google Freedom University and they'll find you. Thank you so much for being on the Labor Forum today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for having us. Thank you.
Bye, Ashley. Bye, Melissa.
Bye. You guys have a great day.
So do we have a promo? We do. So Christopher has given me the thumbs up. So we will take a short break and then we're going to be back with Darrell Lane. We're going to be talking about worker safety and health issues on the job. So stay tuned to the Labor Forum here on WRFG. Welcome back. You are tuned into the Labor Forum here at WRFG 89.3 FM. My name is Diane Mathowitz, and I'm a retired auto worker, and our co-host for today is Paul McLennan, Amalgamated Transit Workers Union, and our guest in the studio is Darrell Lane. And Darrell is with the Bakery Confection, Tobacco Workers, Grain, and Millers Local, right here in Georgia, right here in Atlanta, Local 42. And we invited him because there's still another history date that we want to talk about. And we'll segue from Paul talking about this incredible, disastrous situation where so many workers died here in Georgia. And I want to talk with Darrell because he is a active person in his union, both in organizing and on the issue of health and safety for workers. So go ahead, Paul.
Okay, so also this week on February 7th, 2008, a huge explosion and fire occurred at the Imperial Sugar refinery northwest of Savannah, causing 14 deaths and injuring 38 others. The explosion was fueled by massive accumulations of combustible sugar dust throughout the packaging building. An investigation by the U.S. Chemical Safety Board stated that the explosion had been, quote, entirely preventable, unquote, noting that the sugar industry had been aware of the risk of dust explosions since 1926.
And thank you, Paul, for that. I did some follow-up. I actually went to the internet and looked up the investigative report, both of OSHA and of this Chemical Safety Board. And it's pages and pages and pages. It's pictures of the incredible devastation. This fire raged on for days afterwards. The pictures show huge pieces of concrete and the brick walls that were just tossed in the air. And it talks about what Paul said, that there had been years of accumulation of this dust, and that the company had been totally aware of the failure of the kind of equipment it had to, have this dust removed. In some places, it was so thick on the floor that one worker talked about how he had to sweep a path to get to his machine. And as Paul said, 14 workers were killed, but 36 others were severely burned, causing them multiple surgeries and life-altering injuries. And because this incredible industrial accident, one of the things that is true, the AFL-CIO puts out a like a study or a summary every year, and it's called Death on the Job, the Toll of Neglect. And each year, this multi-page document goes over all of the occupations, the ones that have the highest level of death and injury. It goes over the states with the highest level. It talks about something that I think will shock you. I mean, I was shocked when I read it. It's the number of workers that are killed every year, and it ranges in about 4,500. And those are direct deaths on the job. And then there's millions who have injuries that require hospitalization or loss of work, and sometimes long suffering diseases and illnesses. And one of the things that was so astonishing in this 2014 AFL-CIO document is that currently, because of budget cuts that have been imposed by, a very much pro-boss, pro-business Congress, there are now less than 2,000 federal and state inspectors who are supposed to be looking after workers who work in 8 million different workplaces. And according to this document that I read this afternoon, in order to just inspect each one of those sites one time, it would take 139 years for every workplace currently in the United States to get an OSHA inspection to see whether or not it was safe for people to work there. So, Darrell, wow. It's like so amazing. And both Paul and I and you, we work in union plants.
Right.
We both worked in union plants. This Imperial Sugar was a non-union plant. Most often, the workers who die are, in fact, in plants where the workers have no voice on the job. So if you wouldn't mind just commenting to get us started, your union is a union that is largely engaged in food manufacturing, food packaging, and even poultry plants.
Exactly.
Now, so all of these are places where there's repetitive motion in terms of, working your hands to do this. Many times it can require standing. Many times there can be heat or cold. So if you wouldn't mind just talking about, and I don't know if you ever worked in a non-union place before you worked in the union place. I know I did. If you wouldn't mind just commenting a little bit about this whole issue of health and safety conditions on the job, why it's so critical that workers have an ability, to have a safe workplace.
Well, it's very important, and it's good that we do have OSHA, someone that we can refer to when we have certain issues. It's also a lot of the things that go on is you have a lot of injuries such as dust from sugar, flour, also seasoning, because some of our plants, they run various cracker products. They use various type of seasoning from barbecue to ranch to lemon pepper. A lot of times those seasonings get airborne. A lot of times they get out of one area and may get into the air and go and flow across the plant where other workers are also working. Sometimes it also crosses cross contaminations of other food lines which you're running various other products. So that is one issue that we sometimes occur in different plants that we have. Some of the other issues is that when a flour system malfunctions, I have been in a situation or in a plant where a flour malfunction and there was a flour explosion, but not exactly not a fire or anything, but it was probably about, I don't know, maybe about I can't say exactly, but anyway, it was so much flour that the whole plant was totally black dark because the flour just kept pouring out of the silos. So you experience that kind of situation at times. And who would ever think that so much flour could cause a whole plant to become totally black dark, even with the lights on. So you experience that type of problem as well. You don't have time to get a dust mask, not when you don't know this is going to happen at all. So, and then you got sugar that, it also can also become airborne and combustible and turn into a fire. I've heard of those situations at some of the other plants that upstate and up north, rather, those type of situations have happened. So those are some of the ones that I have experienced and have knowledge of myself.
So can you say a little about health and safety from a union point of view? What difference it makes?
Well, from a union point of view, when you have a union, an employee that reports it or reports it to OSHA, there's no retaliation. And then once this is reported to OSHA, OSHA requires the company to post it in the plant, the citation and what they're planning to do about it. Also, OSHA gives the company a certain length of time to report back to them what did they do about it. And they have to also post it on the board so that each and every employee knows what was done to correct the problem under OSHA standards, that this situation should not occur again.
So you can imagine in a non-union plant for a worker to file some complaint with OSHA, they would be putting their job potentially in jeopardy.
Right. There'd
be retaliation.
There will be retaliation to the employees. And I've had the experience of talking to non-union workers at other facilities that have told me that, they're scared to either report it or even go make a complaint about it to the company because there'll either be fire or there'll be retaliation. So that's the difference when you have a union. You have the support of the union that there won't be any retaliation.
Right.
I just want to add this thing about this fact that it would take 139 years for every workplace to even be inspected with the current number of OSHA and federal and state inspectors there are. So obviously, the having a union contract that lays out whether you've got a health and safety rep, whether you've got the right to file grievances and file complaints, that's the first best step you can have, because in your work life, it's probably not likely that a OSHA inspector is ever going to walk in the door unless there is, in fact, a complaint that's been filed. So they don't have the time or the ability, apparently, or the numbers to, or the budget
Right.
to just make inspections of every workplace. They only go to the squeaky wheel.
Right. Right. Exactly.
I wanted to ask you, both Paul and I, we both worked in places that had conditions that were, as part of the work, could be dangerous. I worked in auto. I was on an assembly line for 30 years. There was repetitive motion. There was heavy equipment being moved. There was noise. There was chemicals. There was drills and power tools and a whole variety of things. But I have to say, as someone, that I always felt totally confident that if I thought something was unsafe, I had the absolute ability and right to not do it, to call my shop steward, to go higher up and explain why I thought something was unsafe and why it needed to get fixed. So I don't know, I want to give both of you an opportunity to talk about that because for me, in a huge assembly plant, the fact that that was possible made the difference, made just a huge difference in my feeling like I could do this job and come home.
Right. As in our plant, having a union, it gives you an opportunity to report an accident, to also make sure and follow up with the company that it has been taken care of properly. Also, having a union, it gives you a voice in your contract negotiation. Some of our contracts, it also states that the company and union will have a joint safety committee together. So it's not just the company having a safety committee on their own with just their members and the people that they choose, but it also says that the union will also be a part of it with a certain amount of union members, and they would meet on a monthly basis to go over safety, to also go around the plant and identify unsafe issues and to work on getting those issues fixed, so that would eliminate a lot of injuries such as slips and falls, back injuries, even in a bakery facility. A lot of times you have sharp objects, sharp knives or machinery. So you also have not only slips and fall and not only carpal tunnel, but you also have a lot of amputations. So when you have a safety committee and a joint safety committee, it also helps you address those issues. And it helps you, when you have a union, you have access to those files. When someone gets hurt, what was done about it, when did it happen, and it also gives you a right to follow up with the individual who was injured. And sometimes individuals don't always know that they have the union to back them when there's an accident. So that's the I want to say the good part about having a union.
And isn't there also, I think, legislation concerning right to know, that workers have a right to know what they're being exposed to in a work environment?
Yes, a lot of times you have those MSD slips.
Right.
That anytime you want to know what's in a chemical, because even in a bakery, you have cleaning and you have to use certain chemicals. Well, you need to know what it was if you get skin burn or something get in your eye. So they have the MSD labels. So the first aid department has to give you any information regarding that chemical so that you can follow up with OSHA or FDA if it's a food chemical, because I myself had allergic reaction years ago to a food chemical ingredient, and I had to go to the first aid to get a copy of the label. And when I took it to the doctor, we found out that it had ingredients that I was allergic to that caused skin rash.
I wanted to just go back to this AFL-CIO report again, which people can just find online. It's called "Death on the Job: The Toll of Neglect." It's a long document, tons of graphs and stuff like that, and it lists the top types of jobs that have the most deaths. And I expect a lot of people might have a incorrect idea about which jobs are the most dangerous. For example, people involved in fishing, and obviously people would think construction. You might not know that pilots and flight engineers rank up on the top grouping. Transportation, like truck drivers and anybody that moves materials on forklifts and things like that, very high ranking. And then, of course, other kinds of jobs that involve with heavy equipment, like the ones that we're talking about in manufacturing. Not that it's so many deaths, but those are the places that there are more injuries. So when we talk about deaths on the job, it's the ones that I mentioned are some of the top ones. The other thing that this report talks about is what the cost to the economy is for the fact that bosses prefer to look the other way when it comes to safety for their workers and what it costs. And it's estimated, this is just on lost time, $250 to $330 billion a year because of worker injuries.
Mhm.
It's stunning. It's a stunning fact. And when I said this number about 4,600 workers dying on the job a year, that comes down like 13 a day. Now here in Georgia, and I think because we don't hear about these big loss of life all at one place, like a mine disaster or the plant in Texas that blew up, or the sugar mill here in Georgia, it more often is, it hardly makes a headline. A worker dies on a construction site where, he's buried or falls off a roof or something like this. For the most part, those deaths don't even cause any kind of consternation in the press at all. We just don't know about them.
Right.
Could you say some about your union and who they represent and how long you've been a member and what kind of work you do?
Well, our union, the abbreviation is BCTGM, but its name is Bakery, Confectionery, Tobacco Workers, Grain and Miller. We represent the cookie industry, which originally started out as Nabisco years ago, and then they were bought out by Kraft, merged by Kraft, and now the name is Mondelez. We also represent Nestle, Purina Dog Food, which is in Atlanta, Georgia as well. We represent the Vita France Bakery. We represent also Ralph Core, and they make product for Pillsbury. We represent a poultry plant in Carrollton, Georgia as well. We represent the Kellogg's workers in Columbus, Georgia. We represent the bread company in Atlanta, Georgia. The name is Bimbo, but their original name was Colonial Bakery,
Right.
as we all know. So,
Go ahead.
so we represent probably about, at the moment, about 14 throughout Georgia.
And you became a union member, and then how did you get more involved in terms of being a steward?
Well, I started in 1983, so I've been a union member 32 years. And the way I became a steward was a fellow employee came from a plant that was part of UAW union, and his wife was a UAW GM worker. And at the bakery, we had conversations, and I used to always tell him, you all ain't doing nothing but taking my money. I ain't seen nothing yet. But anyway, the way it got started, he said one day, well, if you think you can do better, do it. All right. So then one day he said, well, I'll tell you what, I'm gonna get you voted as a steward. And once he got voted me in as a steward, what I thought is an overnight process. We have a process that you go through. A grievance is by like getting a ticket. Once you get a ticket, at our plant, we have 30 days to meet on it once the incident. So it's the same way with a ticket. You get a ticket, 30 days to appear in court. When you appear in court, you get a chance to appeal it. And the grievance is like basically the same way. You have your with some of our contracts, we have a first step, second step, third step. Then if we don't still don't like how it turns out, we have arbitration. And then you go from there. So once I got into it, I really liked it, and I saw the benefits of it. And then when I really was amazed, we was invited to Savannah. Our union was through the Labor Council, and in Savannah, I was listening to the speaker, Phil Laporte. I think I'm saying his name right. Anyway, in when he was talking about the grievance procedure and how far it goes back, even to the United States Constitution, which is right above the paragraph of their arms. And it was amazing that how long that the grievance procedure has been around. So the amazement of it, what kept drawing me in. And then also when I won my first grievance, it made me challenged even more. And then slowly,
that's a good feeling,
right? It's a good feeling when you win your first one, and then when you win your first one, you think you're gonna win your second and third one. Then you get disappointed because you didn't win it, but you're not gonna win.
Going.
Right? You keep going. You're not gonna win every single one, but you'll win the most important ones. Then after I started going to the Labor Council, getting involved in the union rallies, from the Walmart to the teachers to the rally, which was my very first. My previous business manager took me, Johnny Jackson, from that rally to the Walmart with out in Decatur on Church Street and Scott Boulevard with Mary Lou. To the most important rally, which I'll always remember, is Senate Bill 469, when they was trying to stop us. The bill was you wouldn't be able to voice your opinion. So that was one of the most important rallies to me of all since I've been there. Your right to have a voice, really. So that was the most important one that I'll always remember as well.
Well, thank you so much, Darrell. It's been a cool conversation. And here we are. I don't know what the degree of separation UAW is.
UAW workers helped brought me along.
That's right.
And then I have quite a few family members that were previous UAWs from Ford and General Motors.
So super for taking the time to come into the studio today. I really enjoyed this conversation.